Good morning, Foresight TV friends and families. I am just really excited. My guest today, who I'm going to bring on in just a few minutes, is a good friend. He is an author of one of the most important books on dementia. I don't like to say care because it's sort of really dementia living, and he has spoken nationally and internationally. I know you're going to enjoy him. And I will finish the introduction, bring him on right after this. Welcome to Foresight TV, where we provide leadership food for the soul, helping senior living organizations have higher occupancy, lower turnover, and better cultures. Today's episode is made possible through the generous support of Connected Living, a technology company that helps senior living communities effectively communicate with residents, families, and team members. Here's today's show. Well, John, my friend, welcome to Foresight TV.
Steve, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I am excited to have this conversation with you. We are good friends. We sit on the Abe's Garden, which is a demonstration project, dementia care community in Nashville, Tennessee together. You've driven that program. I want to actually, we're going to dig into sort of your methodology and your thinking about working with people who have dementia. But I'd actually like to kind of back up a little bit. How'd you actually decide this was the thing you wanted to dedicate your life to?
Well, my background is I'm a sociologist who dealt with the physical environment. And somebody came to me 30 years ago and said, can you create a neighborhood for people with dementia that can give them a life worth living? And it was in Indiana, and we started to work with them. And then I realized that if we could use the physical environment, design, the way it's laid out, all of the environment to give people with dementia a life, we could do it for anybody, because it was like the extreme. And once I realized how interesting it was, I decided just to continue with it. It was just worthwhile doing all the time.
Perfect. So you've got kind of a different approach to people with dementia that I actually think it's pretty radically different than what most other people do in the world of serving people with dementia. Can you talk about that? Is it fair to describe it as radically different?
It's a different narrative, right?
Okay.
So there's something called the public narrative. I didn't define that. It's a Harvard professor who called it that. And what it is the way people speak about things, the way people think about things. And the public narrative around dementia, around Alzheimer's dementia and other dementias, has been one of despair. You look at the title of something and it talks about decline. You look at the newspapers and they always begin with the disease that is going to rob you of yourself, that is a downward slope. You won't be able to recognize your family or your children or your wife. You won't know who you are. That's the despair narrative. And that's the one that dominates. So even good care is geared towards fixing the downward spiral. Our approach, the I'm Still Here approach, and it's named after my book, is one of hope. It says, let's accept that dementia is not something anybody wants to get, but once you have it, like you have other chronic conditions or disabilities, let's have the best life we can. And let's engage people. Let's stay engaged. Let's stay doing things together. Let's take advantage of what people can do, not what they can't do. And if you do that, which is this shift from negative to positive, you begin to have a relationship with the person. Once you have a relationship, you can build on that. You can engage them. You can talk to them. They're there.
So this is really fascinating to me because I think that we've largely made that shift with people who are younger, who have both physical and
exactly
and mental deficits. In fact, I was talking to a friend. I'm not sure. I'm not going to tell you his name because I'm not sure he'd be comfortable with that. Who's got a son that has some real significant deficits. I'm not going to go any deeper than that. And just by happenstance, we were talking about this very issue, and it's really clear to him that even though his son has this deficit, he's got this amazing will to live and to live the best possible life that he can live in that context.
Right. So putting dementia into a disability category is, by the way, an international movement that's taking place.
So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, look, I don't play tennis as well as I used to when I was a teenager. I stopped skiing a while ago because I was afraid I might hurt my knees or fall down and twist something. So I can't do things that I used to be able to do better. It doesn't mean I'm not here. So the fact that there are certain things people can't do cognitively, physically, as they get older, doesn't mean they're not people anymore. And by the way, I'm going to share with you and give away to all the audience a table of skills and abilities and memories that people maintain even through a dementia. So we'll talk about that if you like. But the basic difference is that the approach, the I'm Still Here approach, named after my book, focuses on engagement as the key to life, as well as to the reduction of symptoms, to relationships that we need to build with people with dementia to be able to engage them, and then to use the evidence. In other words, to really base this approach on science and on research, not on, oh, gee, I think this is a better way to do things.
So, all right, so what is this happening now? Where's it happening, or is it all theoretical? I mean, I sort of gave away a little bit in advance, right? But talk to me about where this is happening and what it really looks like in practical terms inside senior living.
Right. Well, one thing that's happening is the book, which basically lays out this approach, is translated into French and Italian and Spanish, and is going into a Chinese translation. So that point of view is getting broadened. But also, we have the Hearthstone Institute is a training and education and culture change organization. And we work with different assisted living, some nursing home, some hospice programs for elders to bring this approach to them. And once this education and culture change and training program is in place, they become centers of excellence. One of the centers of excellence is Abe's Garden. And you and I are both on the board of Abe's Garden. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. The environment is a wonderful planned environment to support engagement. And all of the staff not only do what you were saying called care, but also engage. And that is the key to this whole approach. So Abe's Garden is one, the charter community in the Mayo Clinic. There are dial communities in Nebraska. There's a community in Greater Atlanta called the Grand at Sterling Estates. There's a large number. There's 40 centers of excellence with 2,000 residents and 7,000 staff, all of whom are using this approach.
Great. So I want to actually take a pause here. Not quite a commercial break, but almost a commercial break. So if you would like to get this resource that John talked about, and maybe in a minute I'll have you re-describe it, if you text to 916-659-5287, the word TV, we will get this resource out to you either today or Monday. And so we would love to make that available. If you've already joined the community, I know some of you have, we will send that out to you as well and make sure that you have access to that. So I'm going to leave the text up there, but just text to that number, TV, pretty simple to do, and you'll actually get a return that asks you to fill out a little bit more information so we just know who you are, and then we'll get this out to you. So tell me about what's the resource again, and then we're going to come back to the
actually a couple of pages, a table from my book, little PR here. The book is called I'm Still Here, and it's a table of memories and skills that are still there with people with dementia, even as they go further into the condition. And it's a very useful, I was thinking it should be really a poster. So depending on what we can do, we can turn it into a poster and make it something they can put on the wall and use constantly.
That's actually a cool idea. So I want to take a little bit of an aside here, John. As you mentioned, I'm on the board with you at Abe's Garden, and I was there for a board meeting. They typically happen in the morning, and then I had some evening engagements, and I just kind of had a free day to do some work. And normally when I do that, I go off to the library, which is real quiet in the independent living section. And I thought, I'm going to just go inside Abe's Garden and work in there and hang out, because I just want to see what it's like.
Sure.
And I've been in it now lots of times. And so I was walking in to go find a place to settle in. And one of the activities leaders, Mallory Grimes, she'll be so embarrassed when I use her name, but she was having some sort of a discussion with a group of residents. And she said hello to me as I was walking by. And so I stopped, and I think I stayed for 20 or 30 minutes. And we had some delightful, wonderful, close to normal conversations. I mean, it wasn't completely normal. And I walked away thinking, this is still really super quality life that exists. So I really, really, and I credit you in that approach. So,
by the way, just let me, the reason Mallory could do that was, one, the training is about how to communicate. And by the way, if you think you and I have normal conversations, I wonder whether people listening in think that. But they're real conversations. The second thing is that she's trained. The education is to give people the dignity of asking their opinions, of asking for their advice. So it is normal. And they'll give you their advice because you ask for it, as opposed to saying, oh, they've got Alzheimer's, they can't give advice, or they can't give an opinion, or they don't have an attitude. Of course they do. And you were part of that. And that's what's really exciting. The communication techniques, as well as the approach that says, these are real people who deserve dignity and respect and personhood.
So let's dig a little deeper into sort of what it looks like on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis at Abe's Garden or another one of your centers of excellence. What does that actually look like in terms of the programming? And in my mind, I'm a lot more interested in programming than I am in physical plant. I mean, Abe's Gardens, as you obviously know, is a gorgeous, gorgeous physical plant. But a lot of people, mostly people are stuck with the physical plant that they've got, right?
Yep.
So, okay.
So key to the whole I'm Still Here approach and to our training is something called the flow. So if you spend time at Abe's from the morning to the evening, when it's really going, like our own life, you take a walk, you walk your 10,000 steps, you walk your dog, you have breakfast, you call somebody, you do the program, you then go and the day flows from one thing to the other. You don't do activities. You're engaged in stuff. Walking your dog is an engaged thing to do. It's not, I'm doing an activity called walking my dog. So first of all, there are no activities. There's engaged flow. And everything can be engaging, from what you're having for breakfast, to how you ask for breakfast, to how it's served, to who you're talking to when it is, to the shift, to the morning meeting, where you are all sitting around and the day is talked about and discussed and what you're going to do, to your club membership, the reading, the garden club, where you go out in the garden and do things. And that membership is not, it's a social role that gives you personhood, a place in the community. It's not, oh, we're going to do gardening for half an hour and then forget it. You're addressed as the garden club member or the committee membership, the one who's going to choose the film that is shown on Friday night. And there's a few people, they're part of the committee, and they're shown this is very important, 2 trailers. And they say, which one do you like? And they go, we like that one. That's the one they're shown. So they're not shown 7 trailers. So one of the things that one of the keys to the whole I'm Still Here approach is choice, is giving people a choice, not saying this is what you're going to eat, this is when you're going to get up, this is what you're going to wear, all that stuff. So a choice has to be given, but not what do you want to eat, but rather, which of these two things would you like to have? The ham sandwich or the chicken salad? Which would you like to watch today? The African Queen or some, Groucho Marx film?
Well, and I'm sort of smiling as you're describing this, because I'm thinking, when we still have a very traditional family, so my wife mostly cooks, right?
Right.
And it's actually easier for me, and I don't have dementia, I don't think. It's a lot easier for me when she comes to me and says, "Would you rather have this or this?" rather than saying, "Well, what do you want to eat?" And so I think it's very, it's the human condition, right?
Yeah, the human condition is the right word. These people that we are on a journey with, and I don't mean care, they're part of the human condition. And I used to have a slide that I would show people that said, I wish people would treat me as if I had Alzheimer's. I don't put it out anymore, but that's exactly why. I want people to give me simple choices. I want people to engage me in something that's interesting, not force me to go to a class that's boring. All of those things that we're talking about are very much, I love what you just said, Steve. It really is about the human condition and accepting these people who we've outlawed, who we said they're not part of the human condition. They don't have a self anymore. And say, of course they have a self. They're part of us. They're part of our community of life.
Okay, so I want to tackle a really tough question. We didn't talk about this in advance, and so I may get you or me in trouble. I'm not sure which. So, as you know, Dr. Al Powers is a friend of yours, and he is kind of a militant about this idea that we ought to not have locked dementia communities, right? Which Abe's Garden is. I want to say that, and I suspect most of the places where your centers of excellence are behind locked doors, with the idea that it's how you keep residents safe. Tell me, how does this all fit with this idea of locking people in?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned, because Al is a wonderful man, and he's actually one of the things he's taught me is he's written a book on well-being, and I no longer talk about curing or about treating. I talk about creating well-being for people with dementia, and he's got 7 categories of it: relationship and dignity and choice, all these good things. And I really think Al is someone who I would agree with. And if you gave me a choice to have dinner with people, I'd probably choose you and Al Power.
Well, thank you.
So let me just talk about Al. So Al and I did a debate at a leading age conference about 3 or 4 years ago on the question, and I took the side of locked units are great, and he took the side of locked units are terrible. We ought to be all integrated. And where it ended up was the following: that in the early stages, most people with dementia are living in communities, and even within assisted living, they're in the assisted living part. They're in the straight, normal, what's called normal, but regular assisted living. And they need programs as well. They also need choice. They also need dignity. They also need engagement. It's a different kind of engagement, and it's not isolating them from others. It really is part of the whole. And those are very important programs to create well-being for those people. One of our centers of excellence is the Westminster Canterbury of the Blue Ridge in Charlottesville, Virginia. And there's a whole group of people living in independent living with some dementia, and they need those programs as well. And they are integrated. And we're working on how to really make that work. At the same time, there are certain situations, certain people, sometimes it's more advanced, where being in a community that is totally geared towards engagement and choice and the training and the culture change is beneficial for them. And really where we ended up was, it's not an either or. It's really 2 ways of thinking about how to provide well-being and a life worth living for people. And some need more support, some need less support.
Well, and I think there's in my view, the idea that nobody with dementia needs needs to be in a secure environment doesn't make a lot of sense, because the reality is some people are wanderers and some people would create great risk to themselves if you would not have it. And I guess you could argue that if you could give them a 24-hour companion to make sure they never did anything, you could probably accomplish what Al suggests. But for the, this is where economic reality comes into play. That's not probably a likely thing that most people have the resources to be able to do.
Right, but the other thing, let me just add to that: 24-hour someone around, they still need to know what to do, because they can't be policemen. So engage them, provide choice. That's what, in any of those settings.
Well, and I think, John, so you actually bring up something really important. I think that, and we don't talk about this enough, but I think that's one of the big, staying at home with a caregiver sounds so wonderful, but if they in a sense, they become a police person. And when my mom was in decline, we had some circumstances where we needed to bring in caregivers, and they were there to provide care, there to make mom safe, but they didn't create a life for her. And I think that's mostly true when that happened. So I want to actually sort of dig a little deeper. If somebody looks at this and says, yeah, this is a really cool thing, I'd be interested in maybe figuring out how to make this happen in my community. Let's actually start with, if somebody wanted to go sort of whole hog into this, what would that look? How would they engage, start doing this?
An individual or an
organization? Let's start with an organization, and then I'm going to take a little detour off that, but I want to start with sort of, this makes a ton of sense. This could make it better for my community, for my organization, if I were doing it this way. So let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't want this to be a sales pitch, but obviously I'm passionate about what we do. So the first thing is, they would go online. Well, first they'd buy the book and read the book. If you don't think it makes sense, that's the end of that. And by the way, this is very expensive. It's something like $9 on Amazon. So it's not a big thing. And in fact, now there's a downloadable version for $4.50. So it's really a simple thing to do. They read the book, they go, this makes a lot of sense. The second thing is, they, as a community, they have to, from the top down, and it's very important that management are involved here. And that's one of the fascinating and wonderful things about Abe's Garden, which is a buy-in from the top level all the way down. And the management has to say, we want to invest in this because it's good for people and they have well-being, but also it's good for marketing. So I just heard from the group in Greater Atlanta, they're full with a waiting list. And there's a lot of people with problems all the time. So it contributes to marketing. It contributes to less turnover of staff. It contributes to residents staying there longer. So they have to look at it as a cost benefit. And if they do, they have to say that they actually go online, find the Hearthstone Institute, and look at our training. And the Hearthstone Institute has the training, it has the research, and that's what they would do. And then they contact us and say, that's too expensive. But I've looked at because the training is not a lecture. And there are other people out there who give a lecture, have a little video. Ours is 6 months, 6 to 12, and then we recertify every year. It really is a partnership with us. And as I said, there's 40 out there, and there's more coming.
Great. So okay. So I want to go now. I need to go practical with you. So I'm a life enrichment director who's watching this. I'm an executive director who's watching this, and I go, haven't you heard occupancy is down? My leadership is never going to buy this, but I'd still like to see if I can do some of this stuff. Are there things that people can do without having to sort of, to get 10% of the way there? Is even getting 10% of the way is better than getting no way there, right?
That's a good question. Well, we do have, there's a PBS program on YouTube, a TV program that they developed called Revolutionizing Dementia Care. Comes out of Charlotte, Virginia, the PBS station there. And it covers a lot of these issues. Al Power is on it. I'm on it. Another colleague of ours, Deke Cato, who's on the at Atlanta at AG Rhodes, is on it. So That's one thing. The second is there's on YouTube, on the web, there's a whole bunch of interviews that I've done. Not only like you're interviewing me, I've interviewed others, and then interviews that I've done that people can get access to. The book has the principles in it, and there's lots of examples out there. And in fact, if people contact us, we'd put together some material that a life enrichment director could use to start down that road. Sort of the themes, a couple of examples. The other thing is that we've got community programs, meet me at the museum, meet me at the movies, all of which are available for people to use in one way or the other. But if an individual life enrichment person wants to do something, they can also contact us, and we'll get them started, get them on the road.
Terrific. So I had a question I was going to ask you, and I forgot what it was. I hate it. That hardly ever happens to me, but once in a while. So dream for me. So actually, I'm going to go a different direction. So we're going to cure Alzheimer's?
No, we're not going to cure it in the sense of we're not going to find a drug or a surgery or a laser into the brain that is going to make the plaques and tangles go away.
I guess I didn't ask the right question. Are we going to get to the point where there's some sort of preventive so that people quit getting Alzheimer's?
The etiology of Alzheimer's is plaques and tangles in the brain.
Right.
These are natural things that occur. And one of the theories about what's happening is when there is an insult to the brain, you fall and you hurt your head, it produces these plaques to protect you. So they have a protective mechanism, and it just goes wild, and there's too much of it. And so, right now, we're not going to find a prevention or a cure. What we can do, will there be some way of delaying it? Maybe. None of the drugs that we have available do that. We know the 5 things to do to keep as much of Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's dementia at bay are the right type of food, less meat, less simple starches, more good oils. Sort of the Mediterranean diet.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep. It is really important to get 8 hours sleep. You get 6, 5, 4 hours sleep. There are people who say, I don't need sleep. That's really a bad thing. That's like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. The third is exercise, both aerobic and isometric exercises, pressure as well as getting your heart going. You and I both have a dog. So we're getting that exercise just because the dog is exercising us. That's good enough. And then the last 2 are stress reduction, which is really inflammation destruction, because stress causes inflammation. So whether it's meditation, whether it's reading, whether it's a good relationship, that's the next one. And the last one, which is really goes back to engagement, is purpose. Having a purpose in your life. Steve, if you keep doing these wonderful TV programs and interviews for the rest of your life, you're going to fend off a lot of cognitive problems.
So actually, let's dig a little deeper into that, John. How do you create purpose for people who have dementia? What do you mean by purpose? So we probably ought to start by defining purpose and then talk about how do you do that for people who have dementia?
Well, I got a simple definition of purpose, which comes from a group of people I'm working with at WCBR, the Westminster Canterbury, the Blue Ridge in Charlottesville. And that is the thing that makes me feel alive. Engagement is something that makes me feel alive. And the way we do it, the way it needs to be done, is not to say, oh, what can I do for you? It's to get to know the person, to get to know them enough that you can say, gee, Steve, that TV program that you used to do, I really loved that. That must be real fun. Why don't we do a TV program on Zoom or Facebook or Teams? That's how I would engage you. Or you with me, you could say, well, you like to talk about design. Why don't we talk about how the furniture goes in this room? So the engagement is the key. And the way to do it is just get to know them. And this is not from the little outline biography that my children or my spouse is going to write if I had dementia. It really means, hey, spend a little time with me, Steve. Once you've spent time with me, you can probably figure out what's meaningful and purposeful for me. And that's the trick.
Yep. Okay, so we're about out of time here. I want to do just a little plug a couple of things again. If you'd like to access these resources, text 916-659-5287, the word TV. You will get an autoresponder that actually asks you for a little bit more information, and we will send out a link with access to these resources either today or Monday. The second thing is that more broadly, what we're really talking about here is reimagining what life looks like in senior living. And it's something that we at Senior Living Foresight are really, really passionate about. And one of the things I think that really, I didn't know we were going to go there, that you talked about, John, that I really appreciate is the idea that this idea of flow is really something that ought to be happening at all levels of senior living. So it's not just a series of activities. And to that end, we have just announced this week, of course, John, you know about this already, but we've announced Evolve 2021, where we're going to be reimagining what life enrichment should look like. And it's very much focused for people who are on the front lines of doing life enrichment. So these are the people who've been in your communities every day, figuring out how to serve residents in spite of social distancing and all the restrictions and quarantines and things like that. And they've done just an amazing, amazing job. So it's something I'd really encourage you to consider as a leader, as a gift. Really, it's a gift that you'd give to your life enrichment people, but in giving them that gift, you actually will be improving your building. One other question, and again, I always hate it when I ask hard questions or sort of semi-hard questions and I didn't prep you on it. Do you have any data in terms of increased length of stay for residents who are for your centers of excellence?
Well, the data we have are both less turnover of staff and also increased length of stay because they live longer. And because they're involved, they don't go to bed and say, I don't really want to be here. I don't want to die. I don't want to live here anymore. I want to die. They live longer. So we have those data from our own experience. The other thing we have is data on less falls, data on less hospital admissions, data on greater engagement, data on less anxiety and less agitation and less apathy. So the data is really important to have. And that's one of the things that we present back. And by the way, I kept saying, whether it's an organization or an individual, so this is a little pitch. It's called the Hearthstone Institute, and it's online, hearthstoneinstitute.org.
So probably the easiest way to do that is just to Google Hearthstone Institute, or I think you may find some other things. So our Hearthstone Institute and dementia is probably the best way to get there if you're Googling it. That's and again, If you send us your number, which I've already harped on enough, you'll have that. John, thank you very much. This has been a great, great conversation. I know I get to see you at least quarterly on the Abe's Gardens meetings via Zoom. I'm looking forward to the next time we can actually do it in person. Those of you who are watching, thank you very much. If there are shows or things you want us to be talking about, or you think you should be a guest on Foresight TV, I would love to hear from you. We've got some exciting things coming up, and I should have the list for next week, but I can't remember what it is.
I just want to say, Steve, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it too.
Great. So I'm going to end the broadcast. Stay on the platform here for a minute. Thanks.